What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to the beginning of an acrylic portrait. As you see the image on the left, that is going to be the completed painting that we will do. The original reference is linked in the description box for you, along with a list of the colors and medium that I will be using in this painting. This will be a short demonstration showing you a very simple approach to starting an acrylic portrait. So first thing we did was to cover the background, working our way now towards the interior shapes, which is what we're doing currently. And you can forego any complicated linear drawing or measurements at this stage. All you want to do is basically set up the surface for the layers that you're going to add. Working on a white canvas is the best way to approach acrylic to my current understanding. And that is because acrylic has a tendency to dry a little bit darker than what we perceive it to be. So starting off with the white actually prevents it from getting too dark too quickly, because it can become a bit of a hassle to build up your lights, especially when you're in the middle stages. The interior shapes are building outwards towards the final outside shapes. So we're building this painting from the inside out. And each decision that I'm making is based on general forms. So we are working general to specific. The colors that were used to make these skin tones were white, burnt umber, yellow ochre, and bright red. And what I'm using there is pretty much just straight white. The light planes. What's important here is to understand that we're still building from the inside out. So we're using a color that is exactly the same as what you saw before, but with a little bit more white added to it. The light planes involve the forehead, the side plane of the nose, the cheekbone, and then the surrounding areas of the jaw. And now we're going to start to get into some of the interior planes of the face as we continue to build more subtlety, treating this very much just as a sculpture. You see the main planes for the eyes are already there, the eye sockets, and the nose, the side plane of the nose. What's important here is that the reference that you're seeing on the left is exactly the same outside shape minus a few little changes that occurred later on in the development of this painting. To my knowledge, what I have discovered with acrylic paint that differs from oil paint is that acrylic paint starts to develop an extremely smooth surface as your layers develop. So working with layers like we have been doing here helps to create a smoother canvas. What it also does is it makes it easier for the smaller layers or more precise brush strokes to be added later on. Now we're starting to begin to draw a little bit as we begin adding the dark of the eyebrows. I also want to note, and you've seen it in previous videos in acrylic paint, you can draw onto it with charcoal or with any kind of dry media that you're interested in if you are having trouble with the outlines. Now this again differs from oil paint because you have to wait a couple days or more for your oil paintings to dry. Doesn't make this any easier or more difficult. It's just something different for you to notice. Now take note that we are painting with smaller brushes with more specificity around the outside shape of the face. Profiles are deceptively difficult because you need to make sure that outside shape is as accurate as possible. Now we just put in a little bit of a dark shape for where the iris, the eyeball is going to fit, and it's not really that easy to figure out where it is at um, first glance. So I recommend using a pencil or a piece of charcoal to draw that in first before going in with paint, like I did. And now we're going in with pretty much straight white with a tad bit of black and some skin tone added for the white of the eye, known as the sclera. Now, out of all of the approaches that I've experimented with thus far with acrylic, I found that this one painting in particular had a much smoother transition from start to finish, and I attribute it somewhat to the layering of the initial background and interior shapes. As you see, going in with the color for the upper lip, the sclera, and eventually the lower lip, it all fits quite nicely onto the outside shape of the face and the light planes that we added beforehand. So all of it seems to fit in a nice and cohesive building process towards the smooth finish that you see on the left. This is a shorter format video, under 15 minutes pre-recorded. I will also be posting a version that is ad-free for my Patreon students, which is also linked in the description box of the video. Now, as this is a pre-recorded video, this will be the time where I won't speak quite as much to give a little less interruption on the painting footage, though I will explain the color choices that I did for the lips. And in most cases, the mixture for the lips is similar to the mixture of the skin tones. You can actually add red onto the mixture of your skin tones, and it will bring down the saturation or the brightness of the red, the out of the tube red, and create a very natural color for red lips. The dark shape for the lips is just as simple, same exact thing, but add perhaps a tad bit of black to it and it will make it a little bit darker. Same thing was with the sclera. Just white and black to create a gray and a touch of skin tone, and that gives you the color of the sclera. As the title may suggest, please note that even at this stage, at just under 10 minutes, if this is your first acrylic portrait painting, this is one of the simplest portraits that you can do. to begin your journey as an acrylic portrait painter. Even if you're not using acrylic, you can still use this type of approach. On the palette, you cannot see the palette because it's a dry palette that I'm using, which back then when this was filmed was just a plastic plate or a paper plate. So what I recommend is a different type of palette called a stay wet palette, which prevents the acrylic from drying too quickly like it does on a dry palette like the one that I used. I do recommend that you have your palette either hold your palette or have it underneath. Having the palette on the side of the painting will cause you pain and discomfort, and it looks better on camera, and in theory it seems like a good idea because the color is right next to the canvas. But after many years of doing that, it will create some discomfort on your shoulder and on your arm. Being able to move the brush up and down frequently will prevent certain pain with your arms. And as you see where I'm holding the brush, do the best that you can to hold your brush as far back as possible. This will create more distance between you and your painting. And please note that if this is your first acrylic portrait painting, have yourself an easel that is 90 degrees or as close to 90 degrees as possible, and keep yourself at an arm's length away from the canvas. And try as much as you can to have the center of your canvas be centered with your eyes, your line of sight. To put it simply, if you were to accidentally smash your face into the canvas, your nose would hit almost right at the center of this canvas. And now we're starting to add some of the subtlety onto the face. And this will lead us into the second part. Please note, those of you that are new to portraiture, new to acrylic paint, and especially new to acrylic portrait painting, this video here will be the best demonstration to my knowledge of how to do your first acrylic portrait painting. Remember, there will be an ad-free version of this on my Patreon, where I also offer online tutoring via Zoom. Link is in the description box of the video. I hope you enjoyed this, and we will return again soon for the second part of this demonstration. Thank you for watching. Next time, we will begin to add the subtleties of the face, explaining how the planes are subdivided into groups that allow you to simplify the structures of the face in a manageable form. That way, you can utilize the fast drying nature of the acrylic paints to your benefit.